This meeting is being recorded.
Hi everyone, my name is Michelle Van. I'm an autistic blogger of my own blog website, The World of Autism. As you may have known over the year and stuff, that I work full-time as a paraprofessional for elementary school students with disabilities. And I work with a ABA therapy company on the side called Full Spectrum ABA here in Florida. You know, I am like always advocating for children with disabilities, and I am working with an ABA company to provide education about with autism to ABA providers. That way they know how to work with clients on the spectrum. And with this guest interview series I've been doing for over almost about 2 years now, I've had guests come on who are autistic self-advocates, to parents, teachers, therapists, you name it. I've had so many people come on to share their experiences with autism year, from people themselves who are on the spectrum, or people who have a family member or have a student or client that's on the spectrum. So I'm excited to have this guest come on. I've actually gotten to know him through the Global Autism Project community. His name is Corben. How you doing today?
Hi, I am doing just fine.
Awesome. So let's get this started by having you introduce yourself a little bit and about with your journey as an autistic.
Okay. I mean, my name's Corben Havener, and basically, I would say I was diagnosed in a more traditional sense in the preschool years. Of course, the DSM has changed, so traditionally, it was initially known as Asperger's, but as the diagnostic criteria has changed, I think there's more recognition and respect that it's all the same spectrum, and it's probably not the most helpful to classify it into two groups. We all have potentially the same groups of challenges. And of course, everybody experiences it differently. But I do think it's helpful to just keep everything under the same, to keep everyone under the same umbrella, and so forth on that. I grew up, obviously, and basically I handled school pretty well. One of the things that now, at my age right now, I'm able to look back and realize what a true individual that I've always been. So, yeah, I've always been somebody that, people got along with. I got along with everybody pretty well. But ultimately, I look back and I realize, boy, I just never really fit in with any specific group or anything. And sometimes you can look at it existentially, or sometimes you can look at it positively, but I'm just someone that never truly fit in. I was just there. I interacted with whoever I interacted with, and got through sort of each stage of life. And I performed well academically, but one thing that maybe can affect many autistic people is you could be a heavy thinker, and school accommodation wise, it was very helpful to me to know that I had that accommodation in place where I didn't have to worry about running out of time at a test. And yeah, I didn't have to worry about running out of time at a test, or having that pressure supersede my potential academic accomplishment. It allowed me to think. It allowed me to process things how I needed to.
Interesting. That is very interesting. I could tell from a lot of your experiences have been very similar to mine growing up. as an autistic, like with academic wise, especially, I was not too big of an issue, especially having those accommodations. Even to for me for college right now, I've been pursuing my bachelor's degree, and having those accommodations, like if it wasn't for getting those services, I would not be doing as well as I am today. So you brought up a really good point about how it's so important to have those resources out there for 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 people with disabilities, because we need those kind of services to for everybody to do well, not just in education, but as I know we've been talking back and forth in messages about with as well as with employment that that we want to go right into today, and we will. So
Oh yeah.
that's another important factor, is that we need accommodations and like these important services, not just like through with schooling, but also for employment. So we've been talking about, I know you messaged me about this, about union advocacy. So I wanted to ask you what it means to you and why is it important?
Okay. Well, I mean, certainly. I mean, um, obviously, in recent years, as people have, as workers have generally realized what our power is on helping drive the profitability of corporations, is that they cannot operate they cannot operate without employees. Um and you know um back at a time when employees had the best standard of living, that's when union membership that was when union membership was much higher. And um I think, before I go specifically into like union advocacy, you just consider what a union is. A union is a collective. So the core of what a union does is, you have a representative that just represents the entire workforce and collectively bargains for an employment agreement for an entire workforce of a company, or any sort of place like that. And it negotiates with the company, not only a wage but benefits, and also working conditions, including specific safety procedures and and everything. And one power, and the most important power that a union has, is, every so often, usually it's a 2-year cycle, a union contract's up, a new one needs to be negotiated. If one side, like say like a company doesn't want to negotiate in good faith, and wants to give a lowball offer in one way or another to the workers, um, the workers do have the ability to strike. And that's important and that's powerful, because if you have issues with your work environment, and you're not part of that collective that a union is, you walk off the job, they'll just replace you. Like, it's easy to replace one, you can't replace an entire workforce if they go on strike. So it puts the pressure on the employer, to meet those demands. Now, of course, working in a union, one thing that I've realized is, you know, each shift or crew has a steward that people can go to address issues. So it's a great way to make sure all employees are treated fairly, um, that specific grievances can be addressed. And the one thing I started thinking about is, well, there's a lot of aspects that can be focused on here. So, in so working at this tire manufacturing operation, one thing I notice is, um, there are challenges and there are opportunities. So, like, if you're an autistic employee, this can be a challenging place to work because they have 12-hour shifts. The schedule that I work on kind of rotates, so I can go a month on days and a month on nights. Um, but there are ways to accommodate that. So one way, and then of course, if you enter near like this place called the curing room, it smells like hot rubber, and that's a smell that can sort of come home from work from you. So those are some of the challenges. But I realize there are ways that you could probably get around those challenges. So, for example, 12-hour shifts, you don't have to necessarily shift between days or nights. Like, ordinarily, people will find a sister crew where they can trade shifts, and if somebody wants to stay on days or nights, they can do that. So that is one way. However, a lot of times it depends on a certain willingness to do that. I believe you know, um, union advocacy could be create a rotational schedule. So maybe like once every 4 months, somebody can rotate if somebody really needs to stay on that, but they can't find an agreeable trade partner. So that could be one aspect of union advocacy to help make the job more comfortable. But also, I think the thing that I found to be the greatest opportunity is to realize where where are these sensory or the STEM opportunities. I work at a station that allows me to pace, which is a pretty underrated. It's pretty underrated STEM, but I do that. I do that a while. I have a lot of space to walk around. I often have the ability to get away from people, as I may need to do that, and that's very helpful. I noticed, like in the verification area, once there's actual tread on the tires, of course you wear safety gloves to do this as well, but you might be able to verify that by spinning a tire around, feeling that tread, getting some good sensory input by feeling like tire tread. So, like there are like good sensory opportunities. Now, it's also a loud environment, so it's like an OSHA required hearing protection. So you do wear earplugs anyway. I don't know if the noise itself could be a challenge, but you're required to wear hearing protection. So I don't know, that could be a wash. So that's a possible opportunity right there. So there's a lot of opportunities to counteract the challenges. I just care about that because unions represent good, stable, family supporting employment that a lot of times too many autistic adults struggle with unemployment or underemployment. So,
Absolutely.
if you can advocate in a union workplace, that gives a great opportunity.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. The importance with that is the fact that with working with like as a collective, like it is so important because it takes a lot of factors into consideration, like the work environment, you know, and like the conditions, just it's great that like where you were saying from your personal perspective in your workplace with stimming, because I know for me what's been great about with my job of working in the schools as a paraprofessional, I'm always moving.
Hmm.
I'm always moving. So it's like, and also like with working with different people. So it's just, you know, it it does depend on the workplace itself. And I think it's very important to consider a lot. And that's where workplaces still need to change about it to take
Hmm.
needs into consideration when they're hiring people with disabilities. Do you agree?
Hmm. Oh yeah, you've got to consider, like, I know every place has every place has a diversity and inclusion initiative, and every aspect of it certainly is important. Um, but the disability aspect is often the overlooked aspect of it.
Yes, that too. When things get a little overlooked too much, that you miss the important. You're missing the missing part.
Hmm.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, like, do you feel like that workplaces still need to change, like in regards to like like creating more like of union advocacy and like with hiring people with disabilities?
Yeah, I mean, I believe there is a whole lot of there's a whole lot of opportunities to change. Specifically in a in a workplace setting forever. Like one of the things one of the things I think it's always a big topic is the self disclosure topic. I have gotten I've I've had a few jobs, and like I don't know that I've ever specifically, like, explicitly self disclosed having an autism diagnosis on the job. And a lot of times there's a lot of perceptions that can come up with that. Like, for one thing, I don't know, people seem to think that once you're out of school, it sort of doesn't exist anymore. Sort of evaporates.
Mm,
They think that yeah, they think it's a thing that only affects children. Like, it's not, but or like, maybe you hear so many accounts of people who you know they're treated differently in a way that's not good. Like, they're treated in a way that's maybe like less mature than they actually are. It's like, or they can't handle or understand things. But I've always it's something that's usually an anonymous self-disclosure on a lot of employment applications. It's usually it's usually it's usually for a tax credit. For the longest time, I've always opted for the prefer not to answer on that, because I had to perceive, like, I had to try and perceive um, what it was. I've always had a hard time to see an autism diagnosis for me personally as a disability, because I do know a lot of stuff. I memorize stuff pretty quickly. I'm very useful in employment situations. However, I know that the process of applying for a job, the process of going to an interview, or you know, um, setting up a start date, and all that stuff is just not friendly at all.
yeah, I get from my own experiences too, where the whenever I was applying for like school district jobs and I'd been through more than one, I the interview process was always a tough one. Always, because
Mhm.
whenever people would ask like like the absolute like worriest questions I've ever heard, I'm like, can you clarify that please? And just, but yeah, and just like stuff like that. Self-disclosure is another big topic. Absolutely, because it depends. It really does depend on like how workplaces their perceptions are when it comes to hiring people with disabilities. Um, are they gonna think about if it's from the perspective of that, oh, this person's gonna need so many accommodations, or are you gonna focus rather on like, okay, this person has a lot of potential to bring on the plate, just because like this is just part of them, part of who they are, and they have a lot of skills that they could bring on for the company and everything, or workplace, you know So I feel like part of it has to do with perception. I do feel that. And, I actually, for me, as I could relate to you in terms of self-disclosure, that I never really had to, per se, because I was more focused on like what I could bring to the workplace, and people have seen that. Although I will tell you a funny story though, is that at one point how I actually it just naturally, like, where the self-disclosure came, where my last school district I worked with back in New Jersey before moving to Florida, my teacher I was working with at the time found me online through a guest interview with Carrie Magro, Dr. Carrie Magro. And so when she saw that about me, she learned that I was autistic online. It's just from outside and stuff. I never specifically said it to anybody until she found out online. I'm like, yeah, but it turned out for the better, honestly, because like it brought a lot of my skills to the plate, and people, like my teacher was asking me questions personally from my own experiences to help our students out in the classroom. So, that's where I feel like that's again perceptions. It still has to change.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the key. I really do think that's the key, and definitely again what you were saying earlier about with coming together like collectively is a key for any workplace.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think so. So
Mm-hmm.
I have one last thing to ask you before we wrap this up, and that would be, what advice do you have for workplaces when it comes to having people with disabilities as employees?
Okay. Yeah, certainly. First of all, there's always one simple question that anybody who is interviewing or setting up an interview, or making sure everything's going all right, can ask, and that is, what can I do for you to help you work the best? And the reason that's such a great question is it's pretty open-ended. It leaves anybody of really any ability or challenge to have a free space to answer honestly about what they need, what environment could create the best work environment. So that's one thing. I mean, it also doesn't put the pressure to self-disclose. I mean, I know, like, for example, simming, that, obviously it's an autistic trait, but you don't have to be autistic to sim. So, like, I mean, a lot of different people, benefit from, stimming devices, or being able to get up or walk around. And, another thing is, generally, if you're working and everything, and maybe your needs, maybe you're not confident that, you'll be taken seriously or get what you need. A lot of times, try to build whatever collective that you can among your coworkers. So just know that you don't have to go up and face that boss alone. If people know you, people know and respect how you work, people know what you do, and you need something, have some backup if you need to go to the boss and, get some accommodation or get anything that you need. Because it's always harder to request those things. It's always harder to request those things on your own. having people being able to back you up is a huge benefit.
Exactly. It pretty much brings up the point that that not only with advocating, that's a big thing. Not only with advocating, but just being able to work as a team. That's how a lot of workplaces are successful, is because if you're able to work as a team, no matter the differences. And that's what makes it so important. No matter like how, if the person is neurodivergent or not, you know, it takes a team and to be able to, for everybody to get their own like needs met. So I'm so glad that you brought that on. Thank you. Awesome. Corben, I want to thank you so much for coming on to share about with this very important topic. I think a lot of people will learn from you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. It was a pleasure to share.
Yeah, thank you so much. As for
All right.
everybody, you know, to follow me as Exceptional Shell at Self Advocate MV on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, TikTok, you name it. I'm on pretty much all social media. So yeah, thank you so much and have a great day.